All right, Mr. Lally, whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Good afternoon, sir. Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Michael Trotta, Trotta.
And where do you live, sir?
Sharon, Mass.
How long have you lived in Canton?
How long in Sharon? Since 82.
And what do you do for work, sir?
I am the Superintendent of Public Works for the town of Canton
And how long have you held that position as Superintendent of Public Works?
since 2003.
And did you work for the town of Canton prior to 2003?
No.
Now, with regard to being Superintendent of Public Works, can you describe to the jury sort of what are your duties and responsibilities when it comes to that work?
Typical management duties of staffing, controlling, directing, working on the budget, working on scheduling, long-term scheduling, 5 to 10 years, capital planning, overall operations, the day-to-day operations, what it takes to maintain a water system, a sewer system, the road system.
Now, with reference to, if I could turn your attention back to late January, early February of 2022. At some point in early February, were you contacted by a trooper in regard to a blizzard that had happened the week before?
Yes.
And do you recall who that trooper was or how they contacted you?
I believe it was Michael Porter, and I believe the contact was by phone.
Now, with reference to that trooper, is that someone that you knew or you had spoken to before in any way?
No.
And prior to that date, did you know a John O'Keefe or Karen Reed or anybody?
No.
And as far as anybody within an Albert family within the town of Canton, were you familiar with them? Did you know them at the time?
No.
Now, when you were contacted in that early February of 2022 with regard to the blizzard the week before, what if anything, was the trooper asking you? What kind of information were they looking for?
He wanted to know what the procedure was when we prepare and staff a snowstorm.
And if you could explain to the jury sort of what is the procedure, or what at that time, what was the procedure and what was sort of the makeup of what the Canton DPW would do with regard to a snowstorm?
Well, we have the town is divided up into, I believe, 29 plow routes, several main routes, and side routes. The routes are generally somewhere between 3 miles and 3.5 miles long. And we have 30, I think back then we had 39 pieces of our own and probably 30-something private plow trucks. We try very hard to have 2 trucks on a route, but we generally don't get enough. So if we try to have a town truck on a route with a private plow on a route. The private plow is procured through a bid process. They have to have a contract. They have to have insurance, liability insurance, and they have to show that they pay their taxes to the state and that they have workers' comp. And they have a contract with the town. Then the operations manager is in charge of the on-site, boots on the ground, if you want to call it that. He'll assign the specific truck and the private contractor to a route. Generally, the day before, maybe 12, 18 hours before, the two of us talk. We try to schedule the overtime so that you're not going home at 3 o'clock and then you're getting woken up at 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning to come back. We like to schedule it so when the guys go home, they know when they're going to come back. To the best of our ability, that's what we'll do. We'll tell the contractors when they are expected. And generally, if we're plowing, it starts with a sanding operation. So we would have a sanding fleet, which is maybe a dozen trucks. They'll come in early, and then the rest of the public works people come in at a scheduled time.
And so there'd be about, and correct me if I'm wrong, there'd be about 30 some odd trucks that were sort of DPW trucks?
A few more. I'm not sure the exact number. It's probably 37 or 38 because that counts sidewalk plows too. So there may be, I think there's 3 sidewalk plows, so there's probably 34 or 35, we'll say, between medium-sized trucks and the big construction trucks.
That was sort of my next question. As far as the DPW trucks are concerned, do they vary in size, or what is sort of the range in size of the town?
They'll go from a pickup, 2-ton pickup, F-150 or F-250 Ford, if you're familiar with that, to a medium-duty 20,000 to 22,000 pound truck up to a large construction truck, which is generally 26, 28,000 pounds.
Now,
the large truck is a 6-wheel truck.
And as far as the other trucks, the private ones, those would sort of be subcontracted out through the bidding process, is that correct?
Yes.
And would the range, as far as the size of those trucks, would that be similar or something different?
They are pickup trucks, usually lighter pickup trucks. There may be a couple of front-end loaders. There's probably, I don't think there's any big heavy-duty trucks, but they're probably pickups. There might be couple of Jeeps, pickups. Again, a medium-duty like an F-350 or F-450 pickup. Those are Fords, and loaders.
Now, with respect to questions or what you were asked about by the trooper, was there a specific sort of street or plow route that the trooper was inquiring about?
I believe he asked who was down, that's Fairview, or down in the Cedar Crest area, that's what we call it. I believe that's what he asked me.
Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes.
I'm showing you a document. Just look at that, look up when you finish. Do you recognize that, sir?
Yes, sir.
And what do you recognize it to be?
This would be a plow plan for that day. It's a plow plan for the season, but it is particularly a plow plan for that storm of January 28th through January 29 of 2022.
Thank you. May I approach again, Your Honor?
Yes.
I'm about to introduce in a minute.
Okay.
I have no objection.
Thank you.
Charles, when it comes to that form for you that's now been marked as Exhibit 109, just have a couple questions for you in regard to what's listed there. So with regard to the top of the page, there's a listing as far as 1/28/2022 Boulevard, 11 p.m. You see that?
Yes, sir.
And what does that mean, sir?
That means that the first group of workforce, which would be the Sanders, were scheduled to come in at 11 o'clock that night.
Now, as far as the next entry going across the top of the page has 1/29/2022, is that correct?
Yes.
And as far as what's listed as W&S/BM/REC at 2 a.m., what does that mean?
W and S would be water and sewer. BM would be building maintenance. REC would be the rec, and they are scheduled. That would be the balance of the Canton's workforce. They were scheduled to come in at 2 o'clock in the morning.
And at 2 a.m., would that be at the same sort of central location?
Yes, they would all report to the Bolivar Street garage. I think that address is 150 Bolivar Street.
Now, as far as the next listing, it states contractors at 3 a.m., is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who's that referring to?
That would refer to all the private contractors that would be plowing that day. So again, it's staged.
And sort of the last sort of notation on the top of that, it indicates out at 5 a.m., 1/30/2022, is that correct?
That would be when we completed and everybody went home.
Now, with reference to the Cedar Crest neighborhood, the area that would include Fairview Road, there's different route numbers that are assigned, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And which route number would include that Fairview?
That would be Lower Cedar Crest, number 11.
And from that would include Lower Cedar Crest, Kings, Fairview, and Spring, correct?
Yes.
And as far as the vehicles and the vehicle types that were assigned to that route pursuant to this list, what types were they and who was assigned?
Truck 30, which would be a town of Canton truck. That's a 43 International. Brian Lockman would be the driver. The 43 International is a medium-duty truck. The next up would be 7400 International. That would be the large construction truck. And there is an absolute, a by-the-yard 4x6, which is I believe that's a small one-ton dump. That would have been the private contractor that was on the route with the city truck.
And so that truck 30, the 4300 International, is that a bigger truck or a smaller truck than the one ton?
Then please again? Then the one-ton?
Yes.
It's a larger truck. It's like a 3 to 5 cubic yard truck, and the large truck is like an 8 to 10 cubic yard dump. That's a dump truck.
And as far as the height on that International, would that be, how much would it be taller or shorter than say, a one-ton dump?
If you want, I would estimate that if you're sitting in the driver's seat of a car, you're probably 2.5 feet. When you're sitting in the driver's seat of a one-ton, you're somewhere around 3 feet. When you're sitting in the driver's seat of this 4300, you're probably somewhere around 4 to 4.5 feet. And when you're sitting in the big construction truck, you're another 8 to 10 inches, 5 feet plus.
Now, when you're driving, or when the plow drivers are plowing the roads, what, if any, sort of instructions are they given as far as how to first start plowing the roads when they first come upon sort of dropping the plows and going?
If we're in a plowable situation, which is kind of hard to define. It's generally when we feel that traffic is impeded or may not be able to safely get up and down the street. So that's probably anywhere around 2 inches. They're instructed, and we're expecting a heavy snow, they're instructed to plow the middle of the road, keep the middle of the road open, and as they make their way through the route, they're supposed to push back a little bit. If they try to clean a whole lane and then come back and do the lane again, generally they end up being in trouble and they can't keep up if it's a heavy snow. So they're instructed to plow the middle of the road, to keep the roads open as much as they can before they do their finished cleanup.
Can I have one moment, Sean?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
All right, Mr. Yannetti.
Thank you, Ron. Good afternoon, Mr. Proctor. Sir, Michael Proctor called you on February 3rd of 2022. Does that sound right?
It may be, I'm not sure of the date.
It was within days of the big snowstorm, correct?
Yes.
You knew that he was investigating the death of John O'Keefe, which had occurred on January 29th, correct?
I did not know that.
Had you heard that there was a police officer who was found dead on the lawn of another police officer in Canton?
Well, I knew, yes, I knew.
It was fairly big news at the
Yes.
time, correct? And were you aware that that was why Michael Proctor was calling you, related to that investigation?
After he called and identified himself, he said that is why he was calling.
Of course. Now, you spoke with him over the phone only, correct?
Yes.
He never came down to the DPW to meet you in person, correct?
Not me, no.
And he never asked to interview any of your employees, correct?
We may have discussed who was on that route and who plowed, but I'm not sure at that time if he had told me he was going to go talk to anybody else.
Oh, so it's your testimony that you may have told him the identity of the plow driver when you spoke with him on February 3rd over the phone.
I may have, but I am not positive.
You don't have a memory of him asking you who the plow driver was?
He asked, no. I don't have a memory of his exact questions.
But leaving aside the exact wording of his questions, it's fair to say you don't have a memory of him asking you who plowed Fairview Road on January 29th. Is that fair to say?
He asked me about, I believe he asked me about this plow list.
About the what? The plow list?
This plow list.
Right, but on the plow list, there's the name by the yard, correct?
Yes.
All right. There's also, to the left of that, an indication of the name of the plow driver, and it's just a first name and a last initial,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
It doesn't spell out the whole last name, does it?
No.
But you know the full last name, correct?
Yes.
You have a limited number of employees, right? It's not a 1,000-person company, right?
Yes.
All right. And you're well familiar that Brian L. is Brian Laughlin, right?
Yes.
As you sit here today, do you have any memory of whether the name Brian Laughlin was brought up during that phone call with Michael Proctor?
I may have said to him that's who BL was, but I believe I referred him to the operations manager to double check who was on plowing that day.
Okay. You say you may have mentioned the name Brian L. or Brian Laughlin, but again, I'm just trying to drill down on what your memory is. Do you have a memory one way or the other as to whether the name Brian Laughlin came up in that conversation?
If you are asking me, do I remember 100%? No.
Okay. In any case, Trooper Proctor, Michael Proctor, never asked to speak with Brian Laughlin when he talked to you over the phone,
He
correct?
did not ask me, no.
I'm going to allow the question and answer.
And how short was that phone call with Michael Proctor?
If I tell you, you're going to ask me, how do I know for sure? I would
Okay.
say a few minutes, whatever a few minutes is.
I'm going to accept that answer. And you would agree with me that after, and you, by the way, you were trying to be helpful, correct?
Yes.
After that couple or 3-minute phone conversation, you'll agree with me that Michael Proctor never followed up again with you personally.
That's a good question. I am not sure.
Okay. Well, I'd like to direct your attention to about a week and a half later, specifically the date of February 14th of 2022, which maybe you don't remember the precise date, but around that time period, you came into work around that time period, and you learned that a defense investigator named Paul Mikowski had left his business card for you with somebody on the DPW staff, correct?
Objection.
Sustained. Ask it differently.
Yes.
I do not.
Sir, that means you don't answer that question. I think he's going to ask one that's an appropriate one for you to answer, okay?
Do you recall, when you came into work, receiving a business card from Paul Mikowski?
No.
Do you recall calling Paul Mikowski back?
No.
Do you recall speaking to any investigator from the defense at any point within a couple of weeks after you spoke to Trooper Proctor?
No.
Do you deny telling Paul Mikowski to call Bill Walsh?
Objection.
Sustained.
Who is Bill Walsh?
Billy Walsh is the operations manager for
The highway department supervisor?
yes.
Did the name Bill Walsh ever come up in your conversation with Michael Proctor back on February 3rd?
Objection.
Did that name come up when you first spoke with Trooper Proctor?
Again, I believe I mentioned it, but I am not positive.
Is it fair to say that the Canton DPW has their own plowing and sanding trucks?
Yes.
Does one of them in particular have a nickname?
If they do, I don't know what they are.
Have you heard one of your trucks being called Frankenstein?
Objection.
Sustained.
You don't drive the trucks, correct?
No, I do not.
But Brian Loughran does?
Yes, he does.
And Brian Loughran was driving the truck that plowed Fairview on January 29th of 2022?
Yes.
Objection.
Let me have a moment.
Yes, it'll stand. The answer will stand, Mr. Lally.
Let me have a moment. Sure. Can I go?
The witness or the sidebar?
The witness.
Yes.
Sorry. Do you have reading classes as well?
Well, I have, yes.
Are
But
you able to read the exhibit that you have in front of you?
yes.
Terrific. I'm handing you another document, sir, and I would ask if you would compare that document with the document you have in front of you and tell the jury if it's the same document or not.
It appears to be.
Does it appear to be identical?
Yes.
I will take the one back that does not have the exhibit sticker on it. Thank you, sir. And I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any follow-up, Mr. Lally?
No, we're gonna, may I just retrieve the exhibit?
Yes. All right, Mr. Trotto, you are all set, sir. Thank you very much.
All right.
You have another witness here, Mr. Lally.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, your next witness, please.
Your Honor, the Commonwealth call Mr. Louis Jutras to the stand.
Raise your right hand. Solemnly swear the evidence to be recorded during the case now here to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. Take the stand.
All right, Mr. Lally.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Could you please state your name and spell your last name for the jury?
Louis Jutras, Jutras.
And where do you live, sir?
Stoughton, Massachusetts.
And how long have you lived in Stoughton?
About 23 years.
And what is it that you do for work, sir?
I work for the town of Canton. I'm the manager of the Information Systems Division of the Finance Department.
And
The
how
what?
long have you been
I'm
doing
sorry,
that?
what was the last part?
Of the Finance Department.
Thank you.
And sir, how long have you held that position?
Almost 25 years.
Now, if you could explain to the jury, just as far as your job is concerned, what does that relate to, or what is it that you do as a director of informational service?
Sure. So my responsibilities are for the municipal departments and all the technology associated with that.
And does that include everything sort of from cell phones to GPS in town vehicles to security systems, things of that nature?
Yes.
Now, with reference to your department, how many people work in your department?
There's 3 of us in total, myself and 2 others.
Do you essentially supervise the other 2 people as well?
Yes.
Now, at some point, if I could turn your attention to around the time of January 29th, 2022, some point after that, did someone from law enforcement or from a police department reach out to you in regard to security cameras or camera systems within the town of Canton?
Yes, I received a notification from the Lieutenant Gallagher that there was a motor vehicle incident in town, that the state police would be looking for some video footage.
And so we received an initial notification from Lieutenant Gallagher telling you that the state police would be reaching out looking for video.
Correct.
And at some point shortly after that, did you receive any sort of, did anybody from the state police reach out?
Yes, Trooper Dunn reached out. We had a phone conversation, and we had email correspondence relative to dates and times. We had pulled some footage from one site in Pequiside Farm that was put together. And then after that, there was a request for anything facing Washington Street, either from Town Hall or from the library.
And so as far as what was relayed to you by Trooper Dunn, what was sort of the description, or what was it that you, were they asking just specifically time frames, or did you get any other information as far as what you were looking for?
From what I recall, there were two different timeframes, between 12 and 1, and then between 5 and 6. That was in our discussion and correspondence relative to Town Hall.
And just to be clear, that's from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. and then 5 a.m. to 6 a.m.?
Correct.
Now, as far as the Peckwood Side Farm, describe to the jury sort of what kind of location that is or what kind of town property it is and where it is in relation to the town.
Yes, so the physical area is off of Pleasant Street, which intersects with Washington Street, closest to Dedham Street and the police department. That's a large area, a big white house, and we have cameras that face the entrance, the street, and the surrounding building.
As far as the coverage from those cameras, you had occasion on either this occasion or prior occasions or subsequent occasions to look at sort of the view that the camera gets from Peckwood Side Farm?
Yes, yeah, we have a straight shot down from the building, down the entrance driveway, right to the street. The other cameras that are around there's a couple of doorbell type cameras that physically focus on specific sections, and then other ones cover the general grounds around the building and the backside.
All right. So can I interrupt for a minute, sir? Could you please spell the name of the farm?
Yep, Pequiside, Pequitside.
Thank you.
And sorry, Mr. Jutras, is it fair to say that the Peckwood Side Farm cameras cover more of the property and less of the street out in front? Is that correct?
Yes,
Now, as far as that was the initial request was in regard to Peckwood Side, is that correct?
correct.
And so the subsequent request, what was that in regard to?
That was for anything town hall or library that physically faced Washington Street.
And so the town hall and the library, sort of where are they situated in relation to each other and in relation to Washington Street?
Yep, so they physically abut on either side of Washington Street, right at the intersection of Sherman. They are diagonal to each other.
Now, as far as the recording devices or the cameras on town buildings within the town of Canton, are those, are they sort of uniform or does it vary from location to location or vary within the location?
The physical model of the recorder, as far as the manufacturer, that is the same that we have across 15 different sites. The types of cameras do change, interior, exterior, doorbell, things like that. But all the actual recording units are of the same manufacturer, just different sizes and models.
And as far as the town hall and the public library cameras, as far as the exterior cameras at least, they face in that area of Washington Street and actually capture portions of Washington Street?
Yes, yep.
Now, as far as the cameras are concerned, particularly the exterior cameras that we're talking about as far as the library and the town hall, how are they sort of set up to record? Is it one continuous recording and motion activated? How is it?
Yes, the cameras, based on size and so on, they are all set up for motion in pretty much all of our locations.
And as far as from your review of those cameras, is there any sort of indication on the footage as far as date and timestamp or anything like that?
Yes, we usually have it in one of the corners or someplace along when we have the video saved off and exported.
And when you were able to pull the video that the troopers were requesting, the date and timestamp affixed to those videos, was that accurate as to what the date and timestamp actually was at the time that it's recording?
Yes, I would believe so.
And sort of those date and timestamps, you know where they come from? Right.
The system is linked to a time server, which is remote and is used from the national standards.
Now, as far as the video is concerned from those, they're motion activated, but how far back do they go as far as how many days pass before, does it get sort of overwritten at some point?
Yes, depending on the site, most of them, because of the motion activated, because of various request types and so on, and the number of the cameras, we usually try to get about 30 days. There are some that go longer because the site is or isn't used as much. And then there are other ones where, specifically with the library, they only requested to have a maximum of 30 days on that device.
And so when you received this request from the troopers, that was well within the 30 days, is that correct?
Yes, yeah, because we're talking February 7th for the last request.
Now, as far as the video that you exported, well, let me ask you this. As far as when you were asked to retrieve that video, can you explain sort of mechanically the process of how you got that video and how you delivered that to the troopers?
Yeah, so specifically for the town and the library one, that again, time frame provided, using the manufacturer's software product, doing the search, picking the cameras that are facing the Washington Street side, and then having the time frame and exporting that out. That becomes, depending on the size of it, either a full executable that can just be opened and viewed, or a compilation of files that has a player with it. And then based on the fact that we had already put videos together and that material was picked up, I had sent a file share link for that information.
You had sent that file share link to Trooper Dunn, is that correct?
Correct.
Now, as far as the video that you reviewed, were you sort of parsing or were you looking for specific areas, or did you just sort of take the whole time period requested and send that off to the trooper?
As far as I recall, it was the whole time frame, just because we only have 2 cameras or so that physically cover the area in question, and he had 2 separate hours in question as well, so they were able to be exported and sent.
Now, as far as this particular video, this is video only, correct? There's no audio that's attached to these cameras?
Correct, no audio.
Now, as far as access to these cameras and the footage within the cameras, who, if anyone besides yourself, would have access to remove any sort of footage from the cameras?
No one.
Now, sir, before get to the camera footage specifically, I just want to ask you about another area. In relation to, also within sort of the ambit of your duties and responsibilities would include GPS on town trucks, correct?
Yes, Public Works has a setup via their radios for GPS information.
And so with regard to that, specifically the DVW trucks, what, if any, information did you receive from anyone at the DVW in relation to those GPS devices within the trucks shortly after the snowstorm from the 28th and the 29th of January?
Yep. So on February 1st, I received notification from the operations manager that the GPS information was not working.
And so you received information after the snowstorm that it wasn't working during the snowstorm, is that correct?
Correct.
And as far as that, as far as GPS sort of going down in the DVW trucks, is that abnormal, or how often would that occur?
Yes, it happens several times throughout the year for various reasons. They have a radio repeater. It's connected through a network. It runs software on a server that we have in-house. Server's rebooted, network goes down, things that change for various reasons, and we need to reestablish connection to whatever recorder it is for that repeater, and then the information is then picked up.
Now, taking you back to the Canton Public Library video that you provided to the trooper, were you told anything about sort of any type of vehicle or anything to be looking for within that particular video timeframe that they were asking about?
Not that I recall.
Did you recall ever actually watching the video yourself as far as confirming sort of what it was?
Yes, I mean, I watched it from the time frame to see that we had information, watched it just to move forward to the end to make sure there was information, and when the recording was physically available. But what was in it, no.
May I approach?
Yes.
Sir, I'm showing you a disc. Just ask you to, as far as that video from the Canton Public Library, you've seen that video subsequently, is that correct?
This disc with the wording on it?
Yes.
No, I have not seen this.
Not that specific disc, I'm sorry, sir. But the footage, have you shown that particular video footage, or did you review that footage before you gave it to the troopers?
This is not mine to the trooper.
Understood. Now, may we approach?
Okay.
And that's Madam Sidebars.
Oh, I'm sorry. All right, so the parties agree that this is the next exhibit, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
Thanks.
Your Honor, with the court's permission, I would just ask to briefly, publish portions from those.
Hold on. Get mine.
I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Gilman, if I could have the first video portion from 12 a.m. to 1 a.m. Mr. Jutras, what's up on the screen? What's up on the screen?
Yes, I do.
And as far as the view from this camera, this is from the library, is that correct?
Correct.
And so as far as what we're looking at here, this is the view from the camera as you observed it on the security camera and as you provided it to the trooper, correct?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, sir, do you have is there a laser pointer up on the desk in front of you?
Yes, sir.
Are you familiar with this area as far as the area of Canton?
Yes, yes. Town Hall is right across the street.
And I'm sorry, I stepped right over your words when you were saying that.
Yeah, so Town Hall is right across the street, and the intersection here is at Sherman, and this is Washington along the street that you'll see.
So Washington sort of runs parallel with the screen, and then Sherman is the street that appears to intersect with Washington?
Correct.
In the area of Town Hall.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. So if you could take that down and just put up the flag to again, sir, what's up on the screen? Do you recognize that?
Yes.
This is essentially the video that you provided to the troopers. There's three from the Canton Town Library from 5 a.m. to 6 a.m. later on that day, January 20th.
Yes, sir.
And the orientation as far as Washington Street, Sherman Street, that's all the same in reference to the earlier. The camera has moved.
Correct.
Thank you, sir. You can take it. I may have one moment, Sean.
Yes.
Thank you very much, sir. I have no further questions, Sean.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Jutras.
Good afternoon, Attorney.
So confirming the state police, when they contacted you, asked for 2 hours of video footage, right? Between 12 and 1 a.m. on January 29th and between 5 and 6 a.m. on January 29th, correct?
Yes, sir.
You pulled that video footage, or at least arranged for it to be pulled for the state police, correct?
Yes.
And I believe your testimony was that you checked the beginning time and the ending time to make sure that you had the right time periods for those 2 hours, correct?
Yes.
But you did not sit down and watch 1 hour of snow falling and or cars driving by the public library, correct?
That is correct.
Did
I
you
did
do that
not.
for between 12 and 1 or between 5 and 6?
Correct. I did not.
And at the time that you provided the video footage to the state police, did you know whether or not there was any missing footage within those 2 hours?
No, because again, I did not play every single second of the video.
Understood. It's fair to say, and you're certain, that you did not cut out any of the video footage in those 2 time periods, correct?
Correct. It's motion activated. That's the only piece.
You provided the state police with the raw footage as it existed in your possession at that time, correct?
Yes.
And at that time, you knew that the raw footage was only saved for between 30 and 60 days?
That one is less than 30, yes.
Right. Now, as of early February, when you were dealing with the state police, you knew that Karen Reed had been arrested and charged in court, correct?
I do not recall if I had that information.
You knew that there had been a police officer found dead on the lawn of another police officer in Canton?
At that time in February, I believe so.
And that likely would have been discussed when the state police called you?
I do not recall the conversation other than asking for video footage for Washington Street.
And I'm sorry, sir, if you could just keep if I can't hear you, I guarantee you that these last jurors can't hear you. Could you just repeat that last question?
Yep, again, when in the conversation with it, we had the dates and the timeframes, and anything else relative to it, I do not recall specifically what
Okay,
conversation.
so you don't have a memory of why you were being asked for this?
Correct. I know it was for a motor vehicle accident. Who and what, I do not recall if that was ever mentioned specifically.
Okay. And you would agree with me that as the IT director, you had the ability, if you wanted to download the footage onto some hard drive to preserve it, if you wanted to do that?
Yes.
Did any state trooper ever ask you to download and preserve that footage so that it would exist longer than that 30 to 60-day period?
No.
And so it's fair to say you did not do that, correct?
Correct.
You complied with what they asked you to do.
Yes.
Now, skipping ahead to April 6th of 2023, you were contacted by Michael Proctor, a state trooper investigating this matter, correct?
I do not recall.
Do you recall Michael Proctor asking you to provide to the defense in this case the same raw footage you had previously provided to the state police?
No.
And you don't recall telling him that you couldn't do that because after 30 to 60 days, the footage is gone, correct?
I had a phone call with what I thought was Trooper Dunn asking for another copy of the data and telling him that I did not have it and I couldn't recreate it.
I see. So you assumed
If it was Proctor, but no, I thought I was speaking with Trooper Dunn.
Trooper Dunn was the name that you remembered from February.
Correct. That was the first interaction I had.
And when they mentioned state police, you assumed it was the same state police trooper, correct?
Yes.
It's fair to say that once you shared the footage with the state police in February of 2022, you didn't control what they did with it after that, correct?
Correct.
And you have no personal knowledge about how they preserved it or didn't preserve it, correct?
I'll allow it. Do you have any idea?
No.
And one last question. You cannot testify about whether any video was removed from the footage after you provided it, correct?
Objection.
Sustained.
Not the thank you.
Hey, you follow up?
No redirect, Your Honor.
Quiet, sir, you are all set.
Thank you.
Another witness.
I do not, Your Honor, no. May we approach this, Dunn?